Well, welcome. We are launching a new series tonight. And the series, I just had a book come out, if you haven't seen it, it's called 9 Things You Simply Must Do to Succeed in Life, and that's where this is going to come from. If you've got an outline, I'm going to kind of talk about in the beginning a little bit about where it comes from, as I do in the book, because it's kind of interesting how this came about. But let me start by asking a question. How many of you have ever had the feeling that, now I know that this probably isn't 100%, but how many of you have ever had the feeling that success, okay, now just let that word sort of resonate for a moment. Success, whatever that means to you, in your relational life, whatever relationships you want to succeed, or in your life of whether you call it career or goals or things that you want to make happen, goals you want to reach. Those two areas of life, on the book, the book title I called it Success in Love and Life. But those two broad areas of what it is we do and how we find love and make that work. How many of you have ever had the feeling at one time or another that success is just kind of like almost vaguely outside your grasp? Anybody ever felt that? Let me see your hands up high, because I want to see who's in denial, because it's the other people. Because I think at some point, or points, or junctures in life, depending on what we're trying to make work, I think that's kind of a universal experience. Now, the problem is that what should be a season in making a career work or making a dream work or a goal or something like that, or even in making a relationship work, where we hit those seasons of why isn't this happening, or why isn't this working, or what do I have to do to make this happen? It should be kind of a season, which is normal, because we hit obstacles and we have lost times and this, that, and the other. But what should be a season often becomes kind of a life. And now, I think that's funny. You're laughing, but I think that we kind of get into the feeling, and it can turn almost into an identity that what I want in one of these areas is almost like outside of my grasp, and I don't even really know how to grasp it, but something else happens, and that is I see that other people have it. And I see that it works for other people, and then you go to the next progression of, well, it doesn't work for me, it works for others. There must be something wrong with me. Now, how many can identify with that feeling? Okay. And so what happens is, it's a little bit like the Bible says, and a desire accomplished is sweet to the soul, and it's a tree of life, and these kind of things, but it says that hope deferred makes the heart sick. And what begins to happen when we have these hopes and these wishes is that our hearts actually can kind of sort of get the flu and get down and kind of can't get out of bed, metaphorically, to go pursue them anymore. So what this series is about is not about the clinical side of life, and I'm going to talk about that in a moment, all the stuff we usually talk about, like problems and depressions and anxieties and et cetera, et cetera. But what this series is going to be about is success. And all about that in terms of what is it that people do? Why do some people succeed? Why does it work for some people? Why does it not work for other people? And how can we kind of bridge that gap? Okay? So that's a little bit where we're headed. If you go to your outline, there's an introduction there, and it says Deja Vu People. Deja Vu people. And point number 1 is the big surprise. Let me explain what I mean by deja vu people. This book was kind of something that developed over a long period of time. It was sort of, I didn't know I was going to write about it. It was something an experience I was having over a number of years. And to understand that, let me tell you a little bit about my work. As you know, I'm a clinician, and we talk about a lot of clinical things, like the things I mentioned. Depressions and addictions and anxieties and relationship struggles and all that stuff. But starting, I went into practice in 1981. I was 8, and a little bit of a early starter. Anyway, at that time, what happened was just, I think it was Providence, but just kind of, circumstantially, I joined a firm that predominantly did organizational consulting in the field of leadership. And so I went into practice with a group that mainly what the psychologists there did was they worked with people in high levels of leadership in companies, corporations, organizations, ministries, kind of all of that stuff. And they did all the things that organizational consultants do, but they did them with, kind of significantly successful individuals who were making organizations work and making corporations work and people who were doing well in life. Well, as all of that goes, what happens is when you're a consultant like that, you run across individuals, and part of that work means that even if it's a CEO of a company, that there are growth issues that they need to, work out. They may be depressed, or they may have some next, growth step that maybe even the board of directors wants them to take, or other kinds of scenarios like that. And so I went into practice, and all of the people that were referred to me that I was going to work not on organizational things, but on individual things, all of these people kind of came out of, pretty high performance kind of levels in life. And so that's kind of how I got started. And then I just continued a lot of my clinical work with people in various, aspects of leadership, and became, a leadership consultant. I've done that for a long time. Now, I tell you that to tell you this. The benefit of that, to me, was not only was I learning about the clinical issues that are common to all of us, whether we're successful or hurting or just making it or whatever, everybody has pain. And as I was working with those things, the benefit was I also got to watch high performers and high achievers for a lot of years. I mean, I'm talking, however long that is, 23, 24 years now. And so that's the context that the material that I'm going to share with you comes from. It's the context of just kind of watching what people do who are kind of making it all work. Okay? So, having said that, here's what happened. I don't know when it first happened, but I'm going to say I've been kind of working on this for somewhere in the, 6, 8, 10-year range. And I don't know exactly when it first happened, but the first incident that I recall of it happening was I was in a consulting situation, and actually it was a business thing that I was working in as well. And we were having this meeting, and there was a guy in the meeting who had accomplished a lot in life, and there was, sort of a problem on the table, and he looked at it, and we're in this meeting, and he said, well, why don't I just take this and do A, B, C, or D? And everybody went, that's great, that's a good idea, let's move on. But what happened was when he said that, and everybody just thought, we solved the problem, we move on, I had this weird experience. And the experience was, and I call it deja vu, because the experience was, I know him from somewhere. But it was like, I know him from somewhere more than from this deal, and from this partnership. But I felt like, it was almost like a past life or something, which I don't believe in, but it was that kind of feeling like, where do I know this person? And I sort of chalked it off, and I didn't take my medication that day or something like that. And I moved on. And then it happened again. Not too long after that, close enough, within a week or so, to where I noticed it as the same experience. And I had this feeling, I know this person from somewhere. And then I started kind of being more aware of this, and it happened a few more times. And what I realized was that, wait a minute, I can't know, it's too many, this is too many, I haven't had 12 past lives, what's going on here? And I started to study this. And I attuned myself to that particular kind of deja vu experience, and I started to watch it. And here was the big realization. The next time I had it was, I don't know this person at all. But what he just or what she just did was giving me that experience. I have seen that before. And what I mean by that was that particular way of handling that kind of problem. And it just became really clear, oh, that's what it is. So-and-so did that, and so-and-so did that, and so-and-so did that. And I started to put the dots together, and then I realized, wait a minute, so-and-so built a $2 billion company, and so-and-so did this, and so-and-so did this. And I put the dots together, and all the people that I had seen that particular way of behaving were all really successful. That was kind of like the common denominator. Now, I don't mean all, it wasn't all like financially successful, even though some of them were extremely so. But what I mean by successful is that people who had grasped life and their goals and it was working for them, they weren't the kind that were repeating the same mistakes over and over again and not being able to get where they wanted to get in relationships or careers. It was kind of like, life is success as they defined it, what they were after, what they wanted worked. And so I thought, gosh, this is pretty cool. I've discovered sort of, the successful personality type, and I want to sort of study this. But then what happened after that was, the bigger surprise was that it wasn't like, not only was it not like a person, it was a way of behaving, but not only was it a way of behaving, it was a bunch of ways of behaving. And what I began to see was, I started to look at these people who kind of life was working for, and there was like this, and 9 is not obviously, the right number, but as I studied it over a long period of time, what I found was that there was a group of behaviors, a set of behaviors, that people who do well tend to do these things. And they all did these things, and I kept testing them, I kept looking for them, et cetera, and that's how I came up with the 9 things. Okay, so the big surprise was that it wasn't like that a successful person, somebody that's making life work, was kind of, sort of endowed with something magic. The big surprise was that there was actually a set of behaviors that I was having this deja vu experience about, and that these behaviors were very, very understandable. In fact, the more you begin to understand them and see them, you will see them like tomorrow. And, if you saw all 9 of them tonight, you would go out tomorrow, and people who their relationships are working or whatever, you would say, there's number 3 and number 9, because they just tend to do these things. Okay? Well, if they're that obvious, then the second point says, why do we miss it? Why do we miss it? Let me ask you a question. Why are these things hidden? Is gravity hidden? Is that a hidden thing? I mean, you can't see it, right? But is it hidden? I mean, do we know about gravity? We do. But it seems like that some people know about gravity, and they actually know about it so well that they practice it, sometimes unconsciously. I know about gravity here. Some of you are looking around. We're on point number 2 now, while we miss it. There are a lot of ways in which we know about gravity, and we just know about it. For example, I kind of know that if I go too far here, I'm going to step off and fall. So I kind of, at least operate it with an elementary understanding of it. But some people know about it so well that they actually use it to do great things. If you build an airplane, what do? You know about how gravity works, and you use those principles, and you can use it to, soar to great heights. But it seems like there are other people that, even though it exists and it's obvious, that they take a ladder and put it up next to a house and take 14 paint cans up there and hang off on one side of it and do this, and it's almost like they're ignoring that the law exists. Well, the things that I'm talking about, I think, are very understandable and visible, almost like gravity is, but we can be unconscious of them or not conscious of them. And where we are not conscious of them, we tend to fall, and where we understand them, what I've found is, and put them into practice, we actually begin to see some different things happen. But why do we miss them if they're so obvious? Well, let me tell you why I miss them. And I think it's also why or, if you've missed some of them, why you can do it as well. That in this area of what we call personal growth, or, whatever you want to look at this whole area we talk about here, that the way that I miss it, and I think that some of you might as well, what we do is sometimes we get bogged down in only resolving our individual issues. Anybody in here have any issues? Okay. What are they? Just shout them out to me. What are your issues? Marriage? That's not an issue. That's a context. But an issue would be self-esteem. I can't communicate. I'm depressed. I'm angry. I'm angry and depressed over not being able to communicate because of my low self-esteem. What else? What are some more issues? I'm codependent. God, I'm getting sicker as the night goes on. What else is wrong with me? What? Fearful? I'm fearful, codependent, detached, can't communicate. What else? What? Phobic, commitment phobic? Yeah, I don't make a commitment to me if I'm them, right? Okay, now all of these things are true. We have these issues. And we talk about these issues because it's very difficult for life to work when we have this stuff and we're working on resolving this stuff. And so, especially as a clinician, that's what we do. We help people get undetached and their relationships work better. We help them get over, self-image problems and et cetera, et cetera. And as we deal with these things, we get better. But getting healthy is one thing, but having strategies to live by is another. And I think a lot of times, people like you and like me who tend to be into personal growth and resolving issues, what we do is a lot of times we kind of are working out our stuff and we're omitting sometimes what the Bible calls the wisdom principles and the set of wisdom, literature that's in there and other places that actually give us strategies that lead to what we call or look at as success. So I think that one of the reasons we miss it is that we go down deep and we try to resolve the hurts. But at the same time, while we're hurting, the third point says life is predictable. Now I put a question mark there because we don't really think it is. But in the same way that gravity is predictable, I think the things that we're going to talk about, the 9 things, are, I don't know if they're laws or not. I don't know if, what category to put them in. But I do think that there are wisdom principles by which, the Bible says God designed the earth with these ways. By wisdom he designed it. And it operates in certain ways. And the way that I like to think about these things is that it's sort of like a river and it's going a certain way, and God designed the earth in a certain way, and gravity works in a certain way. And if we get in step with the way things are designed, that's why people succeed. And what I began to see was that whole area of you having issues, that's really important to work out. But remember where I began to notice these things. I noticed these things in working with successful people who all had issues. So there's good news in there, right? You can be screwed up and have it too. And that's a really cool thing to find out, that we don't have to be perfect, because I don't mean life is predictable you can wrap it up in a box and control it. But what I mean is that it works according to certain principles, and while you are working out your individual issues, you can begin to do the things that people who succeed do. And it's the laws, actually, the principles themselves that bring about the success. Because what we tend to do is we look at somebody and we look at them and we go, gosh, they're so amazing. I wish I could do that. And we think that it's somehow in their intellect or their background or their rearing or their genes or something. But if you really studied it, what it was, most given, that they have certain abilities and gifts, it was the ways that they do life that led to their success. And the good news is you can be still working on your self-image and depressed and detached and can't make commitments and phobic and all that stuff, and begin to learn the way that things work and have two tracks going, both of personal growth and getting where you want to in these other areas as well. And so that's kind of the principle here. All right? So that's the good news. Now, having said that, I want to get into the first one. There are 9 of these. Let me read them to you real quick. The first one is called Dig It Up. And since this is the first night, I'm going to read all these to you. The first one is called Dig It Up. The second one is called Pull the Tooth. The third one is Play the Movie. These are not on your outline. The fourth one is Do Something. The fifth one is Act Like an Ant. The sixth one is Hate Well. The seventh one is Don't Play Fair. The eighth one is Be Humble. And the last one is Upset the Right People. Now, those are all things that screwed up people can do, as we are going to see.